Greetings, my friends. Welcome to Soul Empowerment. This is episode number 55, and today our topic is adventures in curiosity. You might be asking yourself, I wonder what he means by that. Well, good, because if that's kind of coming up for you, then it means that your own curiosity has been activated, and that might be a good thing for you, especially if you're the kind of person who likes to have adventures. And that's what we're here all about, right? Is to have fun, to make the best out of life, and to, just see how much we can learn in a short time. My name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach and author of the book, A Life to Die For, and soon to be the author of another book, Gifts of Wisdom, practices for healing and empowerment. And by the way, both of my guests today, both of my co-hosts are authors on that book. So this is going to be a pretty awesome situation. You'll notice that we only have 3 people on camera today. That's because our other co-host, Gail Nowak, is away on vacation, enjoying some well-deserved time off with her family. So Sarah, why don't you start us off and introduce yourself and tell us all what you do and why you do it?
Well, I'm Sarah, or Sarah Jane. I'm in the UK, born and bred, and I'm a complementary health therapist, mainly working with energy techniques in the form of Reiki and a technique I call vocal Reiki, that is the use of toning sound, the voice. Very powerful technique that I feel I'm here to bring, the energies of which are really supportive of people, especially connecting with the inner child, the hurt, the pain and trauma of our early years. I'm also the founder and the host of Gift of Healing TV, both of whom these beautiful gentlemen have been guests and co-hosts. So so we love sharing it around, folks. We're all here to support each other, and I think this is what this is all about. Every bit that we share in these programs is about our experiences, our perspectives, our understandings that we hope can support you and the empowerment of your soul, your life purpose.
Oh, beautiful, Sarah. Nicely spoken. Thank you for that. And Scott, please introduce yourself. Tell us what you do and why you do it.
Still trying to figure that one out. Amazing. It's all the power of curiosity. Scott Holmes from Boston, intuitive energy healer. I work with multiple modalities, much like Sarah. And by the way, for anyone who has the opportunity to work with Sarah, do it. She is amazing. David has a clarity all his own. We are a mutual love fest here. We collaborate. Here's the thing. In the collaboration, no one is better than anyone. No one is less than anyone. There is a cooperation. There is a respect. There is just such amazing energy. When you work together, it multiplies exponentially. Just the vibration, the energy that you bring to everything. I have learned so much in sitting on these panels from these co-hosts, just listening. I know that we're always here to tell and to talk, but the listening part, usually as the attendee listening to us, get to take that in, but so do we. And these are some incredibly bright, honest, and open people. They're going to bring to you perhaps perspectives that you hadn't thought about before. And that's why we're here, is to change, to listen, and to be curious about all aspects of our life. And so I bring that back to you.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Scott. And I just want to say welcome to those who are here on the live program. Thank you for being here. If you have comments or questions that you'd like to share, please feel free to post them in the chat, and we'll do our best to respond to those as we proceed. Yeah, Scott, you've dumped the word curiosity multiple times in your share there just now, and I take it. I know that curiosity is a big deal in your life. Tell me how it shows up for you, both just in your own living and also in your coaching practices.
In my energetic journey, in my spiritual journey, curiosity, I think, is what it was a stepping stone. After my wife passed, I was very lost. After caregiving for 20 years, I kind of sort of didn't know who I was. Who was I? What was I going to do? Where was I going to go? And so that curiosity that I had sustained as a teenager, when we all are walking our way through life and wondering hey, I want to be a fireman. Oh, I want to be a jet pilot. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be whatever. And we're trying to find that. I found myself in that same place of, who do I want to be now? I'd raised my family. I had taken care of, my daughter and my wife, and I didn't know who I wanted to be. So curiosity was the prime reason that I stepped forward. I could have sat back just doing what I'm doing and lived a very, quiet life. But that curiosity, it allowed me to take one step, the next step, and the next step. And David, you asked about what I do with clients. Well, for me, I get them to ask questions they haven't thought of yet. Now, the two of you have done that to me time and time and time again, by the way, by giving me a perspective, and I'm going, wow, I've never looked at things that way, or I've never thought about even attempting those things. And you have given me, and there's that richness in that. And in working with clients, it's about discovery, self-discovery. The deepest we can go is in here. And most times it's the scariest place for an awful lot of us. And because I know it was for me. And that curiosity to peek around the corner, even though it may be a dark spot in your life or in your personality or someplace you want to keep locked away, opening that up changes. It changes. Now, a lot of people don't like change. Nope. I've done it always this way. I can't do it again. I can't do it a different way. But curiosity leads to, I find, and I truly believe, a fuller life. And I do believe that curiosity is probably the second most powerful force after love.
Well, it's beautiful. Yeah. I can resonate with a lot of what you're saying about maybe being afraid to be curious about going within. How many of us spend the bulk of our lives trying to hide all those aspects of ourselves, trying to prevent other people from seeing what we judge to be perhaps not good enough, or whatever the word is that we want to use. Somehow it's bad, it's evil, it's inappropriate, it's something that I just don't want people to see. So by doing that, by preventing other people from seeing it, I'm also preventing myself from seeing it. And now after 30, 40, 50 or 60 or however many years, I get to this point and someone's asking me to be curious about what's inside there. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I've spent so much time covering it up and hiding it, pretending it's not there. You think I really want to dig through all that stuff and flip the blankets off of it and start looking underneath? You're right, man. It can be challenging. And yet, here's something that I learned as I was doing my work. Often the fear that I have about revealing this stuff has to do with how I imagine other people will judge me when they see those parts of myself. And the irony here that I have discovered is that most people are just thrilled to see the truth of who I am, rather than the pretend thing that I've been putting out into the public persona. They then get to see that I really am a real human being and not some mask and costume that I've been putting out there for all my life. And the other thing that I learned is I had this fear that, if you see this part of me, you're going to hate me, you're going to run away, and you're never going to talk to me again. I will be alone for the rest of my life. That was the kind of story I was making up inside my mind. And when I started revealing stuff and people weren't running for the hills, I said, well, what the hell is this all about? Curiosity really got me going there. And so it was a powerful, powerful lesson, an understanding for me that, and Sarah has said this so many times, most of the time other people couldn't care less what's going on in my life. They're too busy worried about their own lives, right? But we don't think that way. We think that everybody's looking at us, judging us, and making all kinds of negative comments about us. Really, that's all just our own projection. That's all it is. So I thank you for bringing that up, and I totally agree with you. The fear is there, but the fear is completely imaginary. There's nothing real about it. Anyway, Sarah, why don't you tell us a little bit about how curiosity shows up in your life and
Well,
maybe how it
actually,
shows up in your practice?
I'm going to go back to Scott's introduction, and we should bring a huge amount of curiosity into listening. And I mean really listening. And since sort of starting Gift of Healing TV, doing all the interviews, one of the most important things to do is to listen to the guest or the co-hosts. Because if you don't, you lose the plot. And and I am one of these people that I say to my guests, if you have questions you would like me to ask, give them to me. Otherwise, I have two questions. I've told them what those two questions are, one at the beginning, one at the end. Then I listen to your answers, and your answers give me the next question. If
Right.
I don't listen, where's that next question coming from?
Right.
But the same goes within my practice, especially working with the vocal Reiki. And supporting people to connect with the inner child. What they share with me supports, right, where are we going next? And I allow the intuition, whatever you want to call it, to guide me, whether it's interviewing, whether it's with a client. It's listen to what is being said. And if you are fully in that place of listening, you will hear far, far more than if you're in that ego mind of I'm listening to reply rather than listening to understand.
Right.
And that is really, really important. You get families together and all your lives you've been listening to the extent, I can jump in here, I can interrupt, I've got something to add, bang. And it's chaos. Families having a conversation. It just doesn't work, and nobody gets listened to. I'm not saying it's every single family. I hope there are families out there where they do listen to each other and they don't try jumping and interrupting and not letting people finish what they're saying. So it to me, it's a curiosity in listening. What can I hear that I would miss if I don't listen properly?
Mm-hmm. I agree. That's powerful. And certainly as far as listening is concerned, I think curiosity is probably the primary ingredient for a decent kind of relationship in which you really hear what the other person is saying. It's not only about, and I want to just draw a distinction here. It's not necessarily about digging down to get all the, the nuggets and the gossipy details. It's more about understanding what's really going on for the other person. Tell me more about what Josie did. I'm just so curious about that. No, that's irrelevant. If you want to listen to understand, the question would be more like, well, tell me more about how you were feeling and what was going on for you as this was happening. Tell me more about that. I really want to understand that, because it sounds like it was really impactful for you. And that way, what you're doing is you're inviting the other person to deepen his or her own experience of whatever it is they're trying to share, while at the same time deepening your understanding of what they're trying to share. So in that sense, curiosity can be a very powerful tool, and I would say an essential tool for anybody who's in the coaching business. So yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. But I would also like to add that curiosity does not only exist in the context of listening. Think about just, as a kid, what did you do as a kid? What kinds of things did you find yourself doing? I mean, I can remember when I was quite young, maybe 2 years old. I think I was probably about 2 years old, running around the backyard in my mom's or my grandmother's house. I can't remember which house it was, but running around the backyard trying to catch a robin. And I remember my mom saying to me, "Here, take this salt. If you can get salt on that robin's tail, it'll stay with you forever." Well, can you imagine? I was just a crazy little 2-year-old running around with a salt shaker trying to catch a robin. And of course, I couldn't get anywhere near the robin. But it was really, my mom told me something, I took it to heart, and I tried it. And what did I learn from that experience? No, I'm not going to say my mom lied. She was just having fun with me. But it gave me an opportunity to try something new that I hadn't tried before. And that was the energy that I really enjoyed. Learning something for myself that I might never have ever even thought to try. See? So think about your childhood. Think about something that you did that might have seemed a little crazy when you think about it now, but which helped you to learn about this concept of creativity and adventure and all the wonderful things that go with it.
So it's perfect, because I was going to ask for everybody out there, when was the last time that you did that same thing? You were either challenged or you were suggested to do something and you went, "Okay, I'll do it." Hopefully as an adult, you've used a little bit more, sense, so that you're not going to do anything crazy or stupid or dangerous. But the story that I have is this: getting a reading from a medium, a friend of mine, and in the middle of it, she looks across and says, "What?" Now, of course, I in mediumship, I don't do anything like that. I can't see people, and so she's talking basically to thin air as an observer, and she says, "I don't get it. What is Penang? What is this?" And I'm just waiting. And she finished. She said, one of your counsel came and said to me, telling me he had to go to Penang." I said, "What? What's Penang?" She says, "I don't know. Telling me he has to go to the Burmese Buddhist temple." Okay, I'm sitting in Boston, Massachusetts. I have no idea. I've never been to I don't even know what Penang is. So we look it up. Penang is an island part of Malaysia. And in Penang, there is one Burmese temple, Buddhist. And there is one. And it is a 40-foot golden Buddha within this temple. Thinking, oh, okay. Well, that's nice, but they want me to go there. I don't get this. So it was to retrieve soul parts that had stayed there. Never heard of any of this before. So I walked through, and I was on my way to Vietnam with a friend of mine, and we went for 17 days. And it was an absolutely marvelous experience. And when I got home about a week later, the tour company that we went with sent me another advertising, and it was for Malaysia. I went, "Oh, okay." I looked it up, and its last stop was Penang, Malaysia. And I'm looking and saying, "Okay," and I look up where the last hotel is in it, and it's literally three blocks from the Buddhist temple. I looked up and I said, okay. Looked at my girlfriend who'd never really been out of the country, and I said, how would you like to go on a trip? She said, okay. I said, 24 hours each way. You're not going to know any of the food, and it's going to be really hot, but I have to go. She said, okay. So we went on this trip, and the very last stop, the very last day, it was a marvelous trip all the way through Malaysia and Singapore. And the guide had known it was, I told him the reason I was there was to go to this temple. What he did was he brought the whole entire tour to this temple as the very last stop on our journey, because he knew I wanted to go there. And it was just an incredible, overwhelming experience that has stayed with me. And there I have a picture of me standing there in front of a 40-foot Buddha. Overwhelming, golden, just gorgeous. And the reason I tell this story is people may say, really? You're really crazy to take the word of something that you knew that isn't there, and sending you on this trip. Yes, but it was that curiosity. I'd never been to Malaysia or Singapore. I'd never known the culture, and it was an immersive experience. It brought peace to me in that time, and it was a memory that'll stay with me the rest of my life. And if not for curiosity, if not for saying, okay, I would never have experienced that. And it's an absolutely marvelous way that it has taught me to say yes to those things in life. And
that's beautiful. Yeah.
So curiosity, and I challenge people. What have you done lately that people would go, wow, that's really curious, about what you do, if it's not your everyday, ordinary thing?
Yeah, I love it. I love it, Scott. This is, you've shared a little bit about this with me before, but that's the most detail I've heard. So it's really, really touching to hear that from you. And yeah, that's great. Sarah, did you have a similar kind of experience you'd like to share?
Certainly nothing from childhood. I have, because of the traumas of my early years, I have no memories. And I really don't have any memories. I know we went places, but they were just family things. The challenges, if you like, and I set myself those challenges, was after my wake up. And it was just like, no, this is my life, and it's for me to live it and for me to experience it. It isn't for me to be there and just constantly be trying to please everybody else. And so I think one of the first things that I did, I signed up to go on a trip to Romania with a group, the Scientific Exploration Society, to track wolves and lynx in the Carpathian Mountains with the Carpathian Large Carnivore Project. I didn't know any of the other people on it. It was 2 weeks, and the Carpathian Large Carnivore Project is there keeping an eye on the wolves. It's not there to kill them, to harm them, and the lynx. It's all about sort of preservation and that was in February 2000. And do you know what? It was the most amazing experience to go on. We didn't see any in the wild, there was a part of me that was really disappointed about that. But we did have days where we were tracking their tracks in the snow. So, and sort of going up this winding path, and we were following their tracks. And then they'd obviously stopped on an area, and we just had that visualization that they'd stood there and howled, and so it was amazing. They were on the whole a pretty good group. It was something very unusual for me, but I'd also sort of just before that, after I'd organized to do this, I decided to abseil off the water tower in Poole, so the next little town along. And my mother's reaction when I said I was going to do it, you can't do that, you can't do that. But mind you, that was her reaction when I said I was leaving my marriage. So I've been in people pleaser mode. I wouldn't have dared leave my marriage. I wouldn't have dared do the abseil. I probably wouldn't have done the trip with the wolves. I became a member of the UK Wolf Conservation Trust, which is how I heard about it. And I then went and became a trainee handler with the wolves and actually got up close and personal with the wolves at the trust, walking them out on the walks they did with the general public. You know, I suddenly allowed myself to experience curiosity. For me, they are so tied into each other.
Right.
For my 50th birthday, I took just me, off to Egypt on a trip, and it was the chance to hopefully see dolphins in the wild.
In Egypt?
Yes, yeah. Off it's a place called Dolphin. Well, the English name for it is Dolphin House, but it's
Okay.
in a sort of, I can't remember the area of sea water, but yes, absolutely. And sort of, I was there. I think I was there for about a week, and a number of times we went out. Everybody else was scuba diving. I'd never scuba dived, but I got hold of some, flippers, snorkel, sort of goggles, things, and so I had a little bit of, I'd never done that before. Actually, it was great fun using the flippers like a mermaid, but and I found that really, really easy. So have I been a mermaid in a previous life? But, and it came to the very last day, and I just sort of looked sort of skyward because I'd taken a load of energy out with me, and sort of different times, sort of, if you like, released that energy out. And I sort of looked at, I said, "You got me out here because of the dolphins. Come on, I've kept my part of this. It's about time you kept your part of it." And on that last day, we did. I didn't get that close to them, but then they're meant to be in the wild. They're not meant to be played with. But I got a little underwater camera. And when I got back, I said, "Oh, I didn't get them that close." This is going back a bit, 16 years. The film had to be developed, and sort of when people, "I thought you didn't get that close to them." The picture looked as if the dolphin was right there, or the dolphins were right there in front of me. And I said, "Well, obviously there's something to do with the camera or the water that has magnified things that makes it look as if they're closer." So my experience of allowing curiosity, allowing exploration and experiences has vastly gone. I have done some crazy things, but that's what it's all about. It really is. Going and doing the messenger summits that we did, sort of, David, sort of getting on a plane over to America, sort of, I'd never done anything like that before. Then getting involved in writing books, sort of, there are so many different experiences that we can have. Be curious about the things that really draw you, that speak to you, and give yourself the chance, the opportunity to experience them, because you'll always regret it if you don't.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Now I'm seeing how to tie you two together. Well, I don't mean you two, but the stories that you've shared, tying those stories together, because Scott kind of introduced the idea of getting curious about who you are. And what I believe is the more curious you are about who you really are and begin to express and experience that to the fullest extent possible, the more you become connected to your true purpose for being. And all of a sudden you begin to start thinking about things that are in alignment with who you are and why you're here. And then you start doing things. And I believe that's kind of what led you to participate in the Messenger Summits, for example. Because you wanted to find out and learn tools for sharing your message with the world. And part of the other experience was to help you open up and become more blossomed like a beautiful flower that you are, rather than holding yourself in and conforming to someone else's expectation. And that's what I think every single one of us on this planet is here to do. wasn't it Anais Nin who she wrote a poem, and one of the lines that she had in her poem, and I'm going to butcher this, I know it, because I don't know the words exactly, but it was something along the lines of, and then came the day when holding herself in became more dangerous than revealing herself to the world, something like that. And I'm sorry if I've butchered those words, and Anais Nin, please forgive me, but it was a beautiful phrase that she put together, and I think it was part of a larger poem. But I think that really expresses beautifully the truth of why we're all here, you know? And maybe some of us have to go through more challenging parts of our journey so that when we get to the other side, the effect for ourselves is that much greater. I don't know. I mean, I don't know the answers to these things. However, I'm on a journey to try and find out, because that's what I'm curious about.
Wasn't that about a flower? It wasn't the bud of the flower. The day
Yeah,
came.
I think so. But
Yeah.
but she referred to the flower as a she, I believe. Anyway.
Yeah.
It is, and this topic, and David, we talked about bringing this topic up about a month ago, and this topic has just crept up in everything I've read over the last month. It has cropped up in. I got asked to participate in teaching, and it's about communication. And in writing about it, are you curious about what the other person has to say, or much like you said, Sarah, do you just want to respond? You just want to put it out there. How do we learn? You know, it took curiosity from the time you were a child. How learning that when you're first sight and you have your hands and you see them and you stare and wonder and realize what they are and what they can do and how your hands can move, and that curiosity of constancy. And people get into either programmed or the programming we learn, being in the ego mind, we lose that sense of just discovery. How do, what do? David, you've heard me say many times, I'm really living my best 18-year-old life. You know, when I was 18, I was before I graduated high school, I wanted to be a writer, and I wanted to be an architect, and I wanted to be a teacher, and I wanted to travel, and I wanted to do all these things. And life happened, and I raised family, and I worked really, really hard for a very long time. And when I came out on the other side of it and I was alone, I had to rediscover those parts of me that wanted to be there, that wanted to express themselves. And so I started writing every day. the old joke, you know, we're in a book, we're together. It's a arduous process at times. It's wonderful, it's enlightening. When you write, you want to bring forth all this emotion. But when asked, you know, the writers are asked, hey, how do I become a writer? And your answer is, you write. Right? You just have to do the process. And it's a process. And it's, if you love it, it's not work. If you're doing it for work and it's laborious, it's complete and utter drudgery. But it's that finding out of, as you said, David, lifting the blanket, of opening the box, of opening all of those aspects of yourself to see what else is there. Because there are so many parts of ourselves. I was having a discussion. Now, this young lady was a doctor, a psychologist, very well respected, and she had a family, and we had we talked offline, and I said, "You remind me of a fairy." She looked at me and said, "Honestly?" I said, "You have that energy." And she told me this story, how as a child, she would draw pictures of fairies, and they were all over her wall. And she said, in the middle of the night, I think I saw them flying around. I always thought I was a fairy, but my parents, that's childish. No, you shouldn't do that. And she became a doctor because that's what she was told she should do. And she thanked me profusely for allowing her to acknowledge that she was indeed part fairy, because she always felt she was. And you think, wait a minute, that part, isn't that 6-year-old girls with unicorns and fairies and rainbows? Well, that 6-year-old girl or boy resides in every one of us. And it's still a part of us, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe those memories of a 2-year-old. And that stays with you, right? You have that memory. You have that.
Yeah, especially the ones that had some kind of an emotional impact. They do stay with you. Whether it's positive or negative, they do stay with you. Yeah. By the way, Sarah, you were absolutely correct. I found the correct quote. I posted in the chat there. It actually, you were exactly right. And then the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. So I wanted to make sure I did it justice.
You did, by the way.
And Scott, thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, it just shows that, I believe anyway, we all have a certain amount of conditioning that we have to deal with. And for some of us, it's a greater amount. For some of us, it's a lesser amount. If we have parents who are reasonably awake, then the amount of conditioning we have as children is going to be reduced. Unfortunately, those in our age bracket tend to have come from a time when parents were very strict and they were very linear and very scientific and logical about their way of raising kids. And, they had learned that the things that you were describing are childish things. You're supposed to let go of those by the time you're, 10 years old or something. And so, like this little girl who liked to draw pictures of fairies, I'm sure she had that whole artistic side of her kind of maybe crushed a little bit because, hey, fairies are bad somehow. She took that in her mind, that fairies are bad, and stopped doing it and stopped thinking about fairies, And yet I think it's kind of interesting that fairies, for most of us, are we think of them as kind of magical creatures who can do magical things. And yet, isn't that kind of what a doctor does too? Doctors do, in some cases, the doctors who are truly, enlightened and care about their patients do some amazing things to help their patients remain healthy, right? So anyway, I just wanted to tie those two pieces together.
I'm going to say you don't have to be a child to believe in the fairies and more. Bearing in mind, I communicate with dragons and many mythical beings. And as far as I'm concerned, absolutely, going into a meditation, going flying with the dragons and goodness knows what else, off planet, I'm gone.
Right.
And we have that ability to do that. Is that a friend did a guided meditation to your healing pool many years ago, and I've shared one similar sort of since. And sort of, I'm not visual in that sense, hear things. It's a sense of knowing with me. And I was up in the mountains, and there was this sort of pool, sort of small lake in the mountains. And I dived into it. And because you're in a meditation, you can breathe. There isn't any fear of, oh, I'm going to suffocate, I'm going to swallow water, I'm going to die. It's just like I found myself in the oceans, and I found myself swimming with whales and dolphins and nature, the nature of water. If that isn't healing, but let your imagination just explode in curiosity of the things that you can experience in meditation. Meditation hasn't got, yes, sometimes meditation is just sitting there and being quiet, but you can have a visual meditation. And be curious about where it can take you. The same person actually sort of did an exercise with us where we all sort of opened our wings and we all have wings. I'd got the sense of the size of my wings, and one of the guys said to me, Sarah, for somebody so little, you've got enormous wings. I said, yeah, I thought I had. So
Yeah.
we have, there is so much more to us. Be curious. The fairies and more, whoever it is you want to feel you've got a connection with. We all have our own guardian dragon. They've told me that. And we have. And many people I've spoken to is, oh, I love dragons. You've got your own guardian dragon. Have I? Oh, I did wonder, sort of that there is a curiosity about dragons. But when I connected with the werewolf, we've got our own guardian wolf. We have so many guides and guardians. We have guardian unicorn. Yeah, do not doubt. Never think you're on your own. Be curious and connect and let yourself connect. Sort of shared a meditation to visit the mythical realm. Sort of go and connect with them. And as a poem, there's one line in a poem that I was given, the doors of the mythical realm are opening wide. So all those mythical beings that have been shut off from us for so long, they are now much more, they're there for us, much more than they've been for a long time. I'm not saying they haven't been there, but their energies are so much stronger now. Be curious about other things. There is more to this life than this physical body. That we can't see, we can't hear necessarily, but open up to feeling those energies. Be curious of those energies.
Yeah.
The energies of the werewolf were absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
Great. So what you're saying and what Scott said earlier, he was talking about the calling to go to Penang and having some people question how could you make that choice when it's just something that you can't see. It's not there. I believe that's what they said. And this is a flaw that a lot of us make when we get caught in ego mind thinking, in logical, scientific, linear kind of left brain thinking. Then we imagine, well, if I can't see it, taste it, touch it, feel it, or smell it, then it doesn't exist. We are tied to those five senses. And yet, if you think about it, well, think about your hearing just as one example. Most humans have a hearing range from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. That's a very narrow range of sound energy. When sound can vibrate at way below that and also much, much higher frequencies, the fact that the sound is capable of existing in those ranges and we can't hear it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. In the same sense, your eyes, you can only see, I believe it's between 600 and 900 megahertz in frequency for your eyes. I might be wrong about those numbers, but it's up in that range. And that is, again, a very tiny, narrow range of the light energy capabilities. We know that there are frequencies way higher and frequencies way lower. So why is it that we assume if I can't see it, taste it, touch it, feel it, or smell it, that it doesn't exist? Why do we assume that? And so, Sarah, I'm so glad you brought that up. I mean, if you just bring your attention inward and just feel, just kind of sense the energy, you will begin to connect with all kinds of energies that maybe you can't see, taste, touch, feel, or smell. So think about that.
So you talk about energies, and by the way, Sarah, if 6 years ago, if you had talked about dragons and unicorns and all of that, I would have thought myself crazy for believing it. But given that I have been taken on those magic carpet rides, on those meditations by people who deal with that realm all the time, I was able to see, I was introduced, and those energies stayed with me. And You know, I never thought that possible. For everybody out there, have you ever held a rock in your hand? Now, I thought a rock was a rock was a rock. Okay, it's earth rock. Okay, yeah. But have you ever held a crystal in your hand and felt it hot, felt it vibrate, felt energy, closed your eyes and just felt where it vibrated in conjunction with where you are in your body? Something as simple as picking that up and doing that. We are energy. Energy is us. That curiosity about what is beyond our senses, as David had stated, what is beyond our senses? Does it make it not there? No, it just means that we're unaware of it. Curiosity, I think, brings meaning, brings experience, brings delight into our lives. The art of saying yes.
Yeah.
It used to be that I would say no, always. Now I have a hard time saying no to those experiences.
Well, it's interesting that you and Sarah are kind of opposites in that way. Sarah was, as a people pleaser, was always saying yes, and she had to discover her no. And you, on the other hand, were always saying no, and now you're discovering your yes. I think that's really interesting. You know, I just wanted to share a little bit about when you were talking about meditations and all that. I remember, this was quite a few years ago, 2015, I'm thinking. I was invited to do a quantum healing hypnotherapy session with a lady by the name of Josette Prevost. She was trained by Dolores Cannon, who has done a lot of that kind of work. And quantum healing hypnotherapy is kind of designed to help you do past life regressions and stuff like that. And I know a number of people who claim to have had past lives. Me personally, I have no memory of any past life. And even with that quantum healing hypnotherapy, you know, as I tried to do my regression, I could never get to a place where I found myself in another life. But what I found interesting is that in the course of that session, I regressed back to a place where I recognized myself in an existence that wasn't anything like a human existence. It was very different. In fact, you know, as the therapist was kind of asking me to, she was recording this on audio, by the way, not on video. And she was asking me questions like, so tell me a little bit about your surroundings. Tell me a little bit about what your body feels like. Tell me this and that and the other thing. And what was really bizarre is I told her, I said, I can't detect a body. There's no body here. It's just energy. I have no arms. I have no legs, but I have a consciousness. I could feel it. And she says, okay, great, beautiful. What are you doing? And I said, it's really hard to describe. It feels like I'm making connections between one consciousness and another, like building bridges. I mean, that was the only analogy that could come up for me, was building bridges. And I thought, okay, I have no idea what this means or anything, because I cannot associate it with an actual past life experience. Now, that doesn't mean past life experiences don't exist. I'm sure they do. I just personally haven't had it. So just because you haven't had an experience doesn't mean it can't happen. That's the thing that I'm trying to say. And we cannot exclude things just because we have our own limited perspective on, you know, on, first of all the things that we can see, hear, feel, taste, and touch, let alone imagine in our minds. I believe personally that anything at all that can be imagined must exist somewhere in the universe, because otherwise it would not come into consciousness. That's what I believe. I know it's kind of strange, but that's my thought.
Oh, I would say to you, David, that was one of your past lives. I was
That's quite possible.
and
Yeah.
because I was taken to a place where I was off planet, and I'm thinking, oh, this is really very odd. But I was welcomed home as if I belonged there, and it was just an overwhelming experience. And I truly believe that our souls take on so many different forms.
Yeah.
But just to get back to the idea of curiosity and what you folks have already been sharing, when the idea of doing this session was first suggested to me, my immediate reaction was, that stuff doesn't exist. I'd be wasting my time. But I decided, okay, I just noticed that I have shut something down without giving it a chance. And so I had to tell myself, well, what if this really could tell you something? What if that was the question that got me to go ahead and try it? And you see, sometimes that's all it takes, rather than just being a no, or even just being a straight up yes. I think really we ought to do ourselves the courtesy of saying, okay, this is now in my awareness. What is the truth for me right now? Do I want to participate in it or not? Is it going to be something that will help me move forward? These are questions that we can ask ourselves. And so for me, just asking what if was enough to start me down the curiosity road and consider the possibility.
I'd love to touch on a couple of the points we made in our conversation when we were organizing this. And we mentioned people like Eddie the Eagle Edwards.
Oh, yeah.
And what he did, he obviously either had people that really believed him and encouraged him, or he wasn't listening to anybody. And
well, just a reminder, just tell people, who is Eddie the Eagle and why is his name coming up?
Eddie the Eagle Edwards is an English guy who he did something in the Olympics, didn't he? Was it ski jumping or something like that?
Yeah,
correct.
But he was apparently pretty. I never watched it, but apparently was pretty useless at it. But he gave it a shot.
That's right.
It was something he absolutely wanted to do, and good for him. So yeah, and so we don't get. Scotland will obviously get some snow, but sort of being able to sort of actually have all the time you need to actually do all this practice, etc., etc. But this guy gave it a shot. And that's what we're meant to do in our lives. We think about the women aviators that there have been at the very beginning of sort of flying, but all those women during the Second World War who ended up, it's certainly this country, of having to deliver planes from where they were sort of made to the airfields. They hadn't got the guys to do it, so the women were flying those planes. They may not have flown them actually within the war effort out there with the guns blazing, but they did. There are so many people. How did curiosity? Actually, do you know what? I think one of the people who's probably been amongst the most curious was Leonardo da Vinci. He seemed to be curious about absolutely everything. The body, sort of a flight. He just seemed to be curious about the possibilities of everything. Mm-hmm. And he allowed his curiosity. And he left the notes to prove it. But didn't he write backwards or something?
I don't know that.
Yeah. Decipher his notes. But so curiosity is almost something we've lost the ability of, mm-hmm. rather than sort of. So it's time for us to find it again. What calls to you? I said this earlier. What calls to you? What interests you? Be curious about it. Let yourself find out a little. And if it continues to speak to you, go for it. If it doesn't, at least you know.
Yeah. I love that. And the story of Eddie the Eagle is just one example of many. as soon as you mentioned that, I was immediately reminded of I think it was the Bermuda bobsled team.
Yeah.
It may have been the same Olympics. I don't remember. I mean, in Bermuda, they're going to try and do bobsledding, but that, they kind of gained some notoriety. People thought, this is great. These guys, they have no chance of winning, but they're giving it everything they've got anyway. And that's what really, I think, inspires us. Knowing that there are people, and we have this capability too. You don't have to be the world's best ski jumper. You don't have to be the world's best painter. You don't have to be the world's greatest writer. All you have to be is the best possible you that you can be. And if you decide to hold back because you're comparing yourself to all those other people who are amazing, well, just remember the people like Eddie the Eagle and the Bermuda bobsled team who weren't the best, but who decided to prove that they could do it anyway. That's what we really should be paying attention to.
They did the film Cool Running.
Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember watching it.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, it's really, really amazing. And there are people out there people that have no major degree of fame and who can inspire the shit out of you. Forgive my French. It's really, I can think of quite a few people like that. Think about Sean Stevenson. You remember him, Sarah? He showed up at one of the Messenger Summits, the guy in the wheelchair. He was brilliant speaker. There's so many people who inspire without looking to make themselves famous. And they do it because they are curious. They want to know as much about themselves as possible. And in doing that, they have to express and experience that. And everybody else benefits when that happens.
I can't think of the guy's name, but he hasn't got any arms or legs. And
that's another fellow, yeah.
He's an amazing speaker, and and you see him. I forgive the word, but I'm going to say waddling around, But
right.
I think he's married and got children as well. He's had a determination to live his life, and nobody's going to stop him, in spite of the fact that he has these limitations. You've only got to think about the Paralympians. How many of those started with a full physical body and have lost a limb or their eyesight or whatever? Mm-hmm. And rather than letting it get them down, they have said, no, I've been given this challenge and I am going to meet it head on.
Right. And it all comes down to one question, doesn't it? How much can I do with what I've got right now? Well, the only way you're going to find out is by trying and doing something. That's really what it boils down to. And if you take yourself and allow yourself to be curious and dive in and find out the answers to those questions, guess what? You are creating an adventure in your life.
One of the things that I've asked people, it just randomly, as this came up, I said, are you curious? And I've had people say, no, not really. And these are some of the most broadly educated people I know. I said, really? So you're not curious about things? No. Then why did you pursue degrees? Why do you do what you do? Why do you have this just immense knowledge of different things? Curiosity. Yeah. So I would ask anyone out there, when was the last time you were curious or ask yourself the question, what can I do next?
Yeah. All right. I know Sarah's got to get going, so I want to give you both a chance to say some final words, and then I'll close it out. Sarah, why don't you go first?
Actually, I'd like to close this with some light language, if I may. And then people have that curiosity of what it means because I don't know. Feel it. Feel the energy in your heart and your soul. Yes, tanahas nina heran cheke kata ane. Yes, tana katurimiti chi ieta. Ye ha cheki na ateama. Yoshino kotaro manake. Icha e atatakanai I. Tentore iftai ikenche enete. Nahastanake. Hichi na aktana oranai. Che ma akatema.
Thank you. Scott, you have any final closing words?
I would say ditto, but I don't think that would do it justice. Thank you, Sarah, for doing that. Appreciate everything that you brought to the table, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to those who are here on the live program and to those who are watching the recordings. I just want to remind you that you can find the recordings of this and every other episode on my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com. And all you got to do is look for Soul Empowerment and you'll find all of our previous episodes. And there's a lot of them and they're great. And that's what we're here for. So thank you for joining us. And I just want to say my name is David McLeod, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. And I just want to say bye-bye for now. We'll see you next time on Soul Empowerment.
Namaste.